So this is our shop. It's a pretty new shop to us. We built it just a couple years ago. And um, Andrew, if you're able to just show the scene, this is sort of a typical scene when we're doing timber framing. So there's a bunch of timbers strewn out over the shop floor. These ones are actually on the small side. A lot of the timbers we work with are 8 inches by 8 inches or 8 inches by 10 inches. And we're gonna show a quick demonstration on this, one of the bigger ones we have in here. This is an 8 by 10 inch timber. And we're going to show part of how you make a mortise. So if you might not know what that word means. In timber framing, the structure comes together when a tenon, which is like a protrusion off of a timber, goes into a hole in another timber. So the hole is the mortise. So we're going to show a few steps in making a mortise, and it would be a lot more fun if we were all in the same room, but we're not. So we're going to do it like this. Molly, do you want to do some tooling?
Yeah, you want to do the patching and I'll drill a little bit.
Sure. So the first step whenever we make a mortise is to drill a hole. This is where the wooden peg is going to go later. You want to make sure you do the drill hole before you actually cut the mortise, because anytime you drill through empty space, your drill bit is bound to get sort of off kilter. So Molly's going to go for it. She's sighting to make sure she's exactly straight up and down. And Molly didn't punch all the way through with the drill bit, because if she had, some of the wood on the other side of the beam would have split out and it would look bad. We want our barns to look beautiful in every little detail. So she pulled back just in time to not go out the other side. So now we're going to tilt this timber up. She can now finish that drill hole on the backside.
And how does she know where it is on the other side?
Good question. I don't know if you can hear me when she's making noise. So that drill bit, actually, there's like a tiny hole that it makes before the rest of the drill bit goes through. So she poked through with just the very tip of the bit, so she could see that small hole, and then she just came through that on the other side.
Great.
Very good question. So the next step is using the mortiser. And this is a very powerful tool. It's a little bit like a chainsaw with a really wide chain. So the chain is on this bar, and that bar is going to just dig down into the timber. You want to do it? Molly's going to keep demonstrating, and I'm going to keep talking. So I'm going to just set up for her to do this. We have to set the depth. We're going to set how far does this bar actually go down into the timber. And if only I had my tape measure. I'm not really set up for this right now.
That's okay.
So in this case, uh-oh, dropping Andrew's fancy earbuds. Thank you. In this case, the tenon is going to be 5 inches long, and then I'm going to add a little bit extra for what's called a housing, and then I'm going to add a little bit extra beyond that. So I'm going to set the depth to 6.5. And then Molly's going to mortise it. It's very loud. So I don't know if you're able to see down into what Molly just did, but now
Yeah, a little bit.
there's a big hole there. And good thing we had that power tool, or it would have taken a lot longer. So I think we should stop there because that's
Sounds
as
good.
exciting as we're going to get, probably. We
That's
just need a
okay.
mortise.
And so that's kind of how you join two giant timbers together.
Yep, exactly. The
Right.
other one will sit right in here.
Right, fit right
And
into
actually,
there.
that will be a post. So this is upside down right now.
Mhm.
There's going to be a post, and then this will be sitting on top of it. And 3 other
Awesome.
posts.
Great. Thank you for that demonstration.
It was our pleasure.
So,
Shall we go to the
yeah,
office?
we can move into a question and answer period if you're ready for that.
Great.
Awesome. Okay, so they're going to move to their offices and we can ask some questions. That was a very smooth transition. I'm impressed. So you two are just going to kind of be our panelists today. Maybe first, actually, I don't know if either one of you want to just give a quick rundown about the company, maybe how many people work there, where you guys are located, and a little bit more about what you do.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. So we are located in Montpelier and Berkshire. Right now, there are 20 people at the company, but there's a number of people that are part-time. I'm one of them. I have an adorable baby, so I work half-time right now. And it's one sort of unusual thing about the company is it's a worker cooperative. So there are 8 owners of the company. I became one of them a couple of years ago. So after you've been at the company for 3 years, you can buy in and become an owner at the company.
Mhm.
The company's been around for about 15 years, but for the first for the first most of that time, actually, it was a partnership. And it grew slowly, and then sometimes it grew quickly. And in, I think, 2017, it became clear that in order to keep people around, they needed to have a way to buy into the company. So that's sort of why the structure changed. And throughout that time, we've focused mainly on timber framing, but we do a lot of things. We'll do a whole house build, start to finish, if a client is interested in that. And we do a lot of kiosks, trailhead kiosks, like you'd see when you're out hiking. So that's one of our products. We have shipped those all over the country.
Do you want to give a quick just explanation of timber framing?
Sure, yeah, I'm no expert in timber framing history, but it's an old way of building. It's hundreds of years old. So if you live in an old house in Vermont, it's probably a timber frame, but you might not know it. So nowadays, timber framing is a special way of building that people like to celebrate by not covering up the timbers. But back in the day, it was just how you built a house. And so then you just plastered over it. So it's a traditional way that has gotten repopularized sort of starting in the 1970s. And it's a way of building with local natural materials and traditional methods.
Yeah.
And sort of minimizing the use of metal fasteners within the frame itself.
Okay.
Mainly relying on wooden pegs to hold everything together.
Yeah, because I feel like I have such a good sense of what it looks like, but that makes a lot more sense that, right, it's kind of a traditional way of building and it uses that kind of peg and hole method that we saw. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. So I also would like to just open it up to both of you to maybe just tell us a little bit more about how you got into this type of work and kind of what you like about it, what are what you do now, a typical day, that kind of thing.
Molly, do you want to start? Because I just did some talking.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Great, thanks. I'm Molly Brandt. I've been with TimberHomes for somewhere around a year, depending on how you count things. I am originally from the Boston area and just sort of stumbled my way into the kingdom like 10 years ago. I got a job on a farm, and that really has been sort of my primary career in my life. A few years ago, I decided that I was ready for something new, but I didn't want to move, and I wanted to still work outside primarily and work with my hands and have the same kind of problem solving challenges that I did in farming. And very quickly, building rose to the top of that list. And I thought, who the hell is going to give me a job building things? I don't know how to do any of this stuff. But I got one gig and then another gig, and pretty soon it was all the snowball was rolling.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of problem solving skills and a certain amount of just like get her done, and also a lot of reading plans and being meticulous. It takes a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So today I was hanging doors in a house that we're pretty close to being finished with. A normal day otherwise would be doing what you just saw.
Yeah.
Cutting mortises and tenons and all the other different timber framing junctures and timbers that
Right.
will go up in the summer.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about how you didn't really think anybody would hire you. What kind of skills do you have if you've been in farming? But that's so great to hear that. I mean, it's just a learning process. It's you go from one thing to another, and that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Happy to.
So when people ask me how I got into building, I usually say it's a long and boring story, and then I don't tell them. So I'll try to keep it pretty short. I was always interested in building things. I took a lot of woodworking in middle school and I loved it. My dad is a math teacher and not much of a builder, but whenever he did stuff around the house, I would do that with him. So it was always an interest, but I sort of got to a point in my life where I was like, that's sort of hard to follow that interest as a woman. Like in high school, like I went from middle school, I would just pack my schedule as full of woodworking as I could. And then in high school, like suddenly people that I hung out with didn't do shop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always thought about signing up every year. I'd be like, no, I don't even know where the shop is. Like it was just sort of like a different part of school that I wasn't involved in. So I sort of stopped pursuing that for a long time. And then when I was in college, I just happened to be at a timber frame raising at somebody's house on a weekend. It was a volunteer raising, and I just had an absolute blast. And I thought, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was funny because there are actually like 25 people doing the timber frame raising, which is like the fun part theoretically. And I was cutting roof boards with this one other guy. And just to this day, that is what I'd rather be doing during a raising, is just like cutting boards. So I had that experience. And so that summer I tried to get a job as a timber framer while I was on summer break. And I sent a few emails, nothing came of it. So instead I did freelance gardening. I sent out a thing on the listserv saying I was available for gardening help. And one of the people that I was going to work for said, oh yeah, we just moved to town. We're just getting a garden started. And also we're having a timber frame built this summer and we're doing a lot of the work ourselves, but TimberHomes is going to build the frame. And I was like, oh, really? So I ended up, after a few weeks of the summer, quitting all my gardening jobs and just working with them, building their house for the summer. And so those clients who were doing a lot of the work, we just hit it off. They loved having me there. And so TimberHomes came to put up the timber frame, and I thought they were great, and they clearly thought I was cool. So so then I went back to college and I wrote to them and I said, can I work with you over winter break? Because I figured if I just worked with them for a little bit, they would see that I was awesome and they would want to hire me. And it worked. So after I graduated, they offered me a full-time job, and they said, you can work with us, but you also have to do the bookkeeping.
Oh,
Because they figured at the time it was only 4 people. They all had a lot to do. None of them were dying to do the bookkeeping. And they figured I went to college, so I knew how to use a computer. And it turns out I also love bookkeeping. So
there you go.
it was a win-win. And I was sort of worked at TimberHomes. I left for a while, did some other stuff. I went to grad school. I was like, I need to get a job now. But while I'm waiting to get a job in geology teaching, I guess I'll just work with TimberHomes for a few months. And now here we are.
Right.
That was several years ago. So yeah, that's how I got here. And now I'm continuing to do both the timber framing and some of the financial stuff that we have to do on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, thank you. You both touched on this a little bit, but I'm just wondering what type of skills, education, experience is kind of necessary to start a career in the building trades, or whether, a lot of this stuff can kind of be learned on the job. I don't know if either of you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
I know that I definitely don't have any formal training, and I'm trying to think of someone I know who has formal training for the field that they're in any field that doesn't require a law degree or an MD or something. And it's very rare that I can think of anyone who works in a field that they got a degree in.
Right.
To me, the most important thing to me to entering construction is just to be willing to put in the legwork and the homework to, I would say in my first 3 months, there were a bajillion terms that I just didn't even know what they meant. So I borrowed every fine home building magazine I could find and read them all, and every word I didn't understand, I looked up. I think just having that attitude towards being excited about learning and willing to get stuck into it is really the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, that's always kind of nice to hear that, all it takes is some passion and some hard work. So,
And there's so many different kinds of building things that
right.
it takes a totally different kind of person to make cabinets than to be a rough framer or any other. There's a different kind of building for all different personality types. And so it's just about finding your thing and working really hard at getting good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Helen, you said that you were really interested in shop and woodworking in school. Do you kind of credit that with helping you get to where you are today and at least get those foundational skills that are helpful?
Yeah, I think definitely just it's amazing the difference between someone who's done like a tiny bit of building and someone who's done no building. So like, even when I was starting and I felt like I had no experience, like just the fact that I had used a screw gun and a chop saw, like once you can do those things, there's a lot of work that's just really those things. So even if you've just done a tiny bit, it makes a big difference to just have a little bit of that experience, even if it feels pretty basic.
Right. And so since this is put on by Vermont Works Roman, I'm just curious about kind of what what both of your experiences are being a woman in probably a predominantly male field, maybe a predominantly male company. What kind of challenges go along with that? And also, do you have any advice for women who are looking to start a career in your field?
I think, first of all, I would say that I've gotten extremely lucky. I've worked with people that are really very not just open to having women around, but actively have sought that out and created an environment where it just doesn't, like, I don't think about it that often at TimberHomes.
Mhm.
I do think about it when we have subcontractors on site, and I've never really had anybody say anything that was mean or unwelcoming, but I've certainly had a lot of surprise, and it just like makes you realize that it's not normal. But at TimberHomes, I hardly think about it, especially nowadays. We
Yeah.
have several women who are around. Now I really don't think about it. Sometimes a couple weeks ago, I noticed there were 3 women in the shop and 3 men in the office, and I was like, this is awesome. So, yeah, I guess I think that means I don't have great advice. Like, you have to find the right people that are going to be welcoming.
Right.
I wouldn't try to work just anywhere. I think there would be a lot of places that would be really tough to work.
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely seems like, right, company culture is definitely huge. And then also just kind of having a threshold of having a couple other women around. I think that can also help make a big difference. I don't know, Molly, do you have any thoughts on that?
I totally agree with Helen that the primary thing about being a woman in the trades is that you just can't go for work for just anybody, because there are some places where, I interviewed with one company where this guy was like, well, I don't think we would ever really have you doing the regular carpentry, but maybe in the
Yeah.
cabinet shop, or like maybe you could be a project manager. Uh, he was really determined that I wouldn't do any very physical work, which is very funny because I would be terrible at cabinet making. Anytime I have to be more precise than a 16th, I'm just not interested. Um,
Right.
um, and I definitely have had a few scenarios where somebody was just an asshole to me, but I think those are the rare scenarios, and Helen is totally right that just people being surprised and confused and intrigued that you're there is the dominant experience. Uh, so I mean, you kind of just have to roll with it. The one other thing I would say is that uh, part of being a woman in the building trades is constantly questioning whether people are treating you a particular way because you're a woman in the building trades or because you're just doing a thing. Uh, so I would say that sort of like second tier, constantly questioning the context of what's happening in the context of being a woman just takes an extra level of mental energy that men don't deal with.
Right.
I would also say that just keeping a sense of humor is helpful. I collect the weird things that people have said to me. So just not taking it too personally, I think, is when it's possible. Sometimes things are just like really obnoxious, and then it's hard to have a sense of humor about it. But
Right. Thank you.